In today's video, I would like to discuss the partnership of Mojon and Montandon. Now, this was an English company set up by Swiss expatriates who appeared to have had a dual citizenship in both England and Switzerland. Now, the foundings or the very beginnings of this cooperation appeared to be as early as 1870s, and there is evidence that both Edward Mojon and Albert Montandon were located at some point in the perhaps early 1870s, but certainly by mid-1870s. And Albert is identified as a citizen. Now, this partnership probably began as Mojon, Montandon and Company. Now, we find that this business conglomeration or partnership presented watches at the 1878 Paris exhibition, and they were representing England. And later we see in 1883 and 1884 at the Calcutta International Exhibition, where they have presented, and this is under Mojon and Montandon, gold and silver watches. Now, the company was reformatted around 1881 as Mojon and Montandon, and they were primarily based in London at Newgate Street, number 120 and 121. And this partnership ran from 1881 in this form until 1888, when Albert Montandon left on amicable terms, and Edward Mojon continued with John Menger until he retired. Now, concerning the watches that this partnership produced, Mojon and Montandon, they have a very unique pension or maker's mark. Their hallmark is an EM over AM, and the assay office is generally uses Birmingham assay office stamp. Now, sometimes we can see that these were control checked in London, such as at Woolwich, and in one specific case we can see that this one Mojon and Montandon watch was checked by a Mr. Weber there. Now, they had a variety of key wind pieces, and this is seems to be the type of watches they had. Now, they had acquired various rights to the watch patents that had previously belonged to Stauffer and Fies, and we find registrations around 1881 where they have taken over the property rights for these, and the partnership continued. It seems to be somewhat successful in that they had a very large variety of watches. Now, they were fabricating musical boxes as well, and they imported and produced watches which they sold in England, and these were goods originating in Switzerland. Now, Albert did have a factory in Chaux de Fonds, and we find that after the partnership ended, and he appears to have relocated to Chaux de Fonds, and in the early 1890s we see his activity, and we see him moving from various address to address, and there are official notices of the changing of when he changes his domicile, and we see such that he relocated at one point to number 69 Rue du Nord, and later he, after the death of a relative, relocated to Boulevard de la Fontaine, number 3. Now, I should say that the two principals in this partnership, when we're speaking of Edward Mojon, he was a Swiss expatriate. It appears that he may have been from either the Val de Traverse or perhaps even the Geneva area. This is not entirely clear. His mother is recorded to have been living in London during the 1870s, and the family was most probably located there. Now, Albert, he is, of course, Jules Albert Montandon, the son of Jules Frederick Montandon, who was associated with Montandon Frères in Neuchâtel and La Chaux de Fonds. And he was probably the person behind watches signed Jules Montandon Locle. Although this is not entirely clear, he is, however, the most likely candidate. Albert did marry an English lady. This was Elizabeth Cording Potts, and through this marriage, we find a lot of information which helps us to confirm that this is the specific Albert that is related to this Mojon and Montandon. Now, they, the wife, Elizabeth and Albert, they did have a child, and this was a daughter, Vera Bessie. And we do see various connections now later with these. His wife had been married to another man previously, and we see that Elizabeth had two children before, and these children apparently located to Switzerland, and one was working in Geneva, and the other was in the La Chaux de Fonds area. Now, this one of these children is a Charles Potts, and we do see a patent dispute between Albert Montandon and Charles Potts. So this is one of the pieces of evidence that leads us to the fact that this is Jules Albert that we are speaking of, and not any other Albert. So we do have many examples of watches by this partnership, and these are rather nice pieces. Albert seems to have been quite wealthy, and now his factory in La Chaux de Fonds was eventually sold off in 1899. And after this, it's not exactly clear whether Albert was still in the watch business or whether he had retired at this point. It's not entirely clear. However, he did live quite long after that, and we do see that he died in 1930. So he did live a rather long life, as he had been born in 1847. And now I should also mention that he had many, many brothers. His father actually had two different wives, and he had stepbrothers and his natural brothers. However, almost all of these children were in the watch business, and actually the children of Jules Frederick, Albert's father, more or less established a watch dynasty in La Chaux de Fonds. We see a lot of very intense watch production or specialization of various different watch related services. So Arist was making cadrans for watches, and he became known as Arist Montandon Calam, AMC, and we find his hallmarks registered in Switzerland. And of course, one of the other brothers then, Alphonse Montandon Bandelier, established one of the last great watch production companies, and we see his watches continuing up until the early 1930s when he died and his son Leopold took over. So we're seeing mainly ladies' wristwatches, very nice quality, somewhat fancy, extremely small pieces. So this is just a nutshell regarding the data that we have on Mojon and Montandon. This was a very lucrative partnership, and we see that it lasted for a respectable amount of time. And the fact that they were trading in England is very interesting, as they were Swiss expats. And this is very interesting that they had managed to participate in exhibitions representing England, for example, in Paris in 1878, but also the Calcutta International Exhibition in 1883, 1884. So this is quite interesting. But this is just another note for the record to document this partnership, and I hope it was informative. Thank you.